Welcome to the EOQ, a deeper dive. Okay, in this video, we're going to take a closer look at the EOQ and how you can make it work really well in your business. The EOQ is all about balance, and I want to really stress this. This isn't a figure that you use with laser precision. It helps you make decisions as the inventory manager of your business. That helps you ensure that your order sizes and the frequency of your orders of your products are balanced. Now, again, this is not the same as making sure you have enough in inventory or making sure you don't order too much. This is about balancing the costs of your orders with the storage fees. Okay, so it's a little different. It's not incorporated into your forecasts because it doesn't belong in your forecast. What it does, once you've made your forecasts, then you look at that forecasted amount and you balance it against the EOQ. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about now. The EOQ as a standalone sort of a backstop that you check your forecast against to make sure that it's within the ballpark of the balance between the costs of your order and the cost of your storage. Okay, so with that in mind, let's keep going. As a business owner, like I said, one way to optimize your cash flow is to balance the order costs of your inventory with the storage costs, which will be your FBA fees and your warehouse fees. And that's the whole premise of the EOQ. It's important, but it's a secondary formula that you use for your business decisions. So here is the graph of the EOQ. If you look this up, if you type EOQ in Google, you're going to come up with graphs that look a whole lot like this. And so in this particular video, I'm going to explain to you how this graph is made. We're going to use the same numbers that we did in the last video, and this is going to come alive to you, and it's going to mean something to you. So let's take a look at this. Okay, where's the EOQ in this whole thing? Well, it's right here. The EOQ, and I'm going to bring in my mouse here. The EOQ right here is where these two lines meet. There's the balance right here. You have the blue line, which is your ordering costs. And let's take a look at this. I'm going to take this as slowly. If you only order, say, I don't know what this is, 2,000 units, 1,500 units, and it costs you $3,000 per order, my gosh, in order to meet your annual demand, your order costs are going to be extremely expensive. At the same time, let's look at this. This is your holding cost. If you only order a couple thousand at a time, your holding costs are going to be cheap. Now, your ordering costs are going to be really high, but your storage fees are going to be relatively low. So what you need is that balance that I've been talking about. That balance occurs right here at about 7,500 units. Okay, and your total cost, this curve here, is the addition of these two holding costs and ordering costs. And so what you're looking for as you make your determination of how much you should order and how often, you calculate your EOQ, and then the graph will show you the EOQ is 7,500. And you can see graphically, so you don't have this ugly square root formula, you have a pretty graph, and it's got colors, and it's really nice, and it's pleasant. And it tells you, oh, and you think, well, that's simple. Why'd we bother with the square root? Well, this is just a different way, because math has different ways of expressing the same thing. And so this is a graphical representation of the EOQ, and it says right here, the perfect balance is at 7,500. Now, let's take a review of this awesome formula, and here it is. The economic order quantity. There's our square root formula with these different variables. We have the annual demand, the order costs, and the annual storage costs per unit. Now, let's build a graph. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have another awesome equation, and it's the total cost. Now, remember, I'm going to skip back a couple. The total cost is this line right here, and it is important. We need this line here, and so we don't want just the holding cost and the ordering cost. We don't want to just know where those cross. We really do actually want this total cost to help us make our business decisions. So let's take a look at how we build that. We're using the same variables as we had in EOQ, but we're adding the quantity ordered, the Q with the asterisk. And so the equation simply reads total cost equals annual demand divided by quantity ordered times B, which is your order cost, plus quantity ordered divided by 2 times the annual storage cost per unit. So what does that actually mean? Well, what it actually means is the total cost equals the ordering cost plus the holding cost. So let's look at that again on the graph. The ordering costs plus the holding costs equal the total cost. That's what total cost says. So let's look. Holding cost, that's about $45,000, and an order cost, that's about $5,000. You add these two up, the 40 and the 45, and you get to $50,000. That's what the total cost is. It's the cost of the ordering cost plus the holding cost gives you the total cost. I mean, it makes sense, but that's what this line in the graph represents, and it's important. So let's take a look at how we build this whole graph. We start with this equation. This equation, again, you've seen it before, says that the total cost, gray line right here, equals the ordering cost, this represents the blue line, plus the holding cost, which is represented here. So this equation actually builds this entire graph, and I'm going to show you how it finds the EOQ as well. So you never even have to use the square root if you don't want to. And here's why we build this graph. Again, this graph will show us the EOQ. But what we're really looking at is, again, and this is where I want you to get this. We're not ordering based on EOQ. We're not going to order 7,500 units. We're going to forecast our future demand, factoring in seasonality the way that I've taught you, forecasting out for a given forecast horizon, and we're going to factor in for different events. These things are what's really crucial to your particular forecast horizon. The EOQ doesn't know anything about that. The EOQ is taking your annual numbers. However, once you make your forecast, once you've done all that work, you want to look and see, well, gosh, am I being smart about the size of this order as it relates to the balance between the order costs and the storage fees? Now, here's where the sweet spot is. Like I said, the EOQ gives you laser precision, but now the total cost is what's important, okay? Because you're balancing total cost. But let's take a look at it from a different perspective. Let's look at the EOQ as it relates to the total cost. Right here, this line is pretty flat. It flattens out in a range, and this is what I want you to see. This is really the whole purpose of showing you the EOQ. The EOQ is important, but you don't make an order based on it. But what you do is once you've figured out what your forecast is, you look at this range here. That's why I'm taking you on this long trip into the weeds on the EOQ. I want you to see this. This is a range. The most optimal setting is the 7,500, but if we look in this, I'm going to show you exactly how to figure this out. It could be that 6,000 is just almost as cost effective as 7,500, or maybe 8,000 is just as cost effective except for a couple $100 as 7,500. So this is what I want you to really focus on. Most people get lost in EOQ because they don't look at the bigger picture. They don't learn like you've learned, because you're awesome, how to know when to reorder, how to forecast future sales, how to account for seasonality twice, how to factor in events. Once you have that for a particular forecast horizon, man, you're squared away. Now you just want to make sure that you're ordering the right amount in a particular EOQ range, not for a dead center, right on the spot EOQ value, but for a range. That's what the EOQ is for, just to make sure you're in the ballpark. And if you're in the ballpark, and that ballpark, by the way, is right here in this little bracket, the flat part of the bottom end of the total cost curve. Okay, now I sound like a professor, and I don't mean to be, but the total cost curve is what you're really looking at. The EOQ, again, brings you right here, dead smack in the perfect balance. But this is not a perfect world. The Amazon business is not a perfect business. The bottom end of this total cost curve, that's where you want to be. So you make your forecast, then you just double check based on the EOQ, and you say, yep, I'm in the range, or nope, I'm not in the range. Man, I better figure something out, because I must have made a mistake, or maybe I need to reevaluate my numbers. So the question then is, well, how do I build this awesome graph? And the good news is, it's going to take us less than 5 minutes to build this out. Once you know how to do this, and I'm going to give you this spreadsheet once we're done, you'll have an awesome tool for evaluating the EOQ and the range of the EOQ. You're just going to love this. I know I do. So anyways, let's go to the spreadsheets and figure out how to build this EOQ and cost curve graph. So here we are in a spreadsheet. You should be very comfortable with these spreadsheets now. And look at the EOQ. There's not a square root in sight. So, of course, you know that the square root's buried in all of this. But since I've already got it set up for you, then you have nothing to worry about. You don't have to think about it ever again. So Here's our numbers. You should recognize them. We have 22,500, 3,000, and $2.40, which gives us an EOQ of 7,500. Okay, so now we know the EOQ. We got that figured out. Let's take a look at the total cost calculations. Now, I've put this in the spreadsheet just as a reminder while you're building this. So let's build out our graph. In order to do that, I'm going to actually, if you don't have a few of these spreadsheet skills, I'm going to teach them to you now. I'm looking at 22,500. I'm going to do increments of 500 order. Let's say there's 15 a box, that's 10 boxes. And the least amount I'd order, or the least unit size I'd order, would be 10 boxes of something. So let's start with 500. This is the Q here. This is the quantity ordered. So here we have it. Quantity ordered. 500 units. Now let's look at the ordering cost. Now we're just going to build this together, and I want you to see how it's built. Ordering cost is, I'm just going to type this in for you, it's equal to A, which is the annual demand, divided by Q, which is the quantity. We're going to close the bracket, multiplied by order cost. So we're going to put an asterisk. This might be basic for some of you, but some of you are going, wow, I've never done this before. So here's how we do it. And it's B, which is order costs, 3,000. Now, I'm going to do something you might have never done before, but you need to see how I do it. Okay? C8 is going to float, but B3, these values here, B3 through 5, we need to stay the same. In order to make those stay the same, I'll explain that in a minute, is we need to put these symbols here. So the B symbols we're going to do this with. That way, no matter how far down the page we get, we're always referencing back to these cells. They don't change, they don't float. And we hit enter. 135,000. Crazy. Now, what's the holding cost? So what that means is, why is that so high? Well, if we only order 500 units, but it costs us $3,000 to do it, but we need to order 500 units 40 something times, well, it's going to get expensive, right? So let's not do it that way. Let's order more than 500 units at a time for this particular product. And again, we're making these assumptions that it costs $3,000 per order. Okay, so let's continue. And I want you to know that I understand that sometimes you might order 10 and put them on a plane, or sometimes you might have another order that you're putting 10 boxes on, and I get that. So let's just stick with these numbers so you understand the math and how to build the charts. Okay. So the next one's holding cost. Now you know that this is, because I went through the color coordinated part in our PowerPoint. This is the ordering cost. This is the holding cost. So let's do the holding cost here. The holding costs will be equal Q divided by 2. We're going to close this up. And we're going to say times C, which is A, B, C, 240. Now, again, we're going to change this here. And there's our holding cost. So if we only buy 500, then our holding cost is only $600 for the year because we didn't have that many. Now, what's our total cost? Our total cost is really simple. We're going to go auto sum, and we're going to say this plus this is our total cost. Remember, I showed you our total cost on the curve was the ordering cost plus the holding cost. Plus, that's the basics of our calculations right now. Total cost equals ordering cost plus holding cost. So the sum is right there. Now, here's some Excel magic that's going to make this work beautifully. We're going to do 500 unit increments, and we're going to do it to 22,500. So I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to pull this down until I get to 22,500. And you can watch at the bottom of the screen that the counter's ticking away for me, and I'm going to go to 22,500, which is right there. Beautiful. Now, I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to copy this whole thing like this. I'm going to copy this, and we're going to paste it all the way down till we get to 22,500. And we're going to just say paste. Boom. There's all our numbers. Now, what have we got? We got a whole lot of numbers, okay? The next thing we need to do is we need to find the EOQ. Now, the EOQ is going to be found like this. I'm going to highlight this whole row right here, the total row. I think I've done it before. That's why the color is showing up, but I want to show you how we do it. I'm going to go to total cost calculations. Now, I'm going to go to conditional formatting. I'm going to go to top bottom rules. This is all, by the way, in the home. If you go to home, insert, page layout, we're going to go to home, and we're going to go to conditional formatting, and we're going to go to top bottom rules, and we're going to select bottom 10 items. That's going to pull up a screen, and we're going to drop this down to the value of 1. And we click OK. And on the value of 1, it's going to find that middle spot at 7,500 units. That is how we derive our EOQ. Now, that's just a different way to do it. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull this out a bit. Here's a graph. Now, I'm going to delete this graph. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to build this graph. And the graph is not hard. What we're going to do, put my cursor here, and I'm going to select all these numbers, starting with quantity, order cost, holding cost, and total cost. And I'm going to just pull all this down. Then, and this is where it gets fun, I'm going to insert a chart. And the first one I'm going to get is this one. With the scatters, I'm going to select this just to show you some examples. And I'm going to expand it really big. Now let's take a look at this graph. In fact, let's blow this up a bit. I'm going to move this graph up a bit here. Come back down here. And let's look at a couple things. We know the EOQ is 7,500. We found that in the balance of costs. The balance of costs for an annual purchase of our product is $18,000 in storage fees and shipping fees. It's going to cost 18 grand. That's a good number to know. How much does it cost to do all this? Well, based on the values of $2.40 per unit stored and $3,000 per shipment or 7,500 units per shipment, the balance is right here, the EOQ, right there. And look at what this tells you. Now, this graph actually will give you numbers. 7,500 is the intersection. That's your EOQ value, okay? Which is awesome. Now, here, right here, is that low part of the curve. Right here, this is the total cost curve between 9,500 units and 5,500 units. What's the real difference between the cost? It's 18,873, so it's not that much. Over here, you can get to 9,500, so you can order between, let's say, 6,000 units and 9,500 units, and you're still within that EOQ sweet spot. The sweet spot, the perfect sweet spot, if you have all your numbers right and you didn't make any mistakes, and all your estimates were correct, and let's think what you're estimating. You're estimating the cost of a container, which you don't know what the cost is going to be until they book it. You're estimating the annual demand because you don't know what it's going to be until you actually have historical data. You're estimating everything, really. All these things are just great estimates, but you're doing the best you can. You're using the best numbers that you have available to you, and you're using your experience as a business person to get the most accurate numbers to work with. And then when you work with them, if you come in and say, well, my EOQ is 7,500, so that's what I'm going to order, that's a mistake. But if you know where the flat part of this curve is based on your best data estimates, then you know you've got a range to work with. So now what do you have? Let's pull this out a bit. You have a range that'll tell you between 70, if this is the perfect EOQ amount, which is 7,500, which we know from our EOQ formula, but we also know from our graph, we can go from 5,000 to 9,000, and it's not really going to hurt us. So now we know when we're making our forecast, if our forecast is between 5, 6, 7, 8,000, 9,000, we're in the EOQ range and we're good. So it's just, we check that box. Okay, according to EOQ, we nailed it. Now, it's important. The EOQ is important. I don't want you to go away from this module thinking, well, the EOQ is not a big deal. I mean, it's just a bunch of estimations. It's especially important in your more mature products. The ones that you've been selling for years. They're stabilized. You've got thousands of reviews. You're in the top half of the first page, and you're just knocking it out of the park. You're making large orders of this product, and the EOQ is really important. You want to dial that in as close as you can. In this example, would be to the 7,500 units. And that's what the EOQ is really good for. But then at the same time, if you're getting 5 to 10 different products from that factory, or you're shipping from 2 or 3 factories out of the same port, you want to make sure that your forecast is what it is, and then measure against the EOQ to make sure you're putting enough on the ship. Now, if you're looking at, say, you really only need 6,000 units, and that's within your queue, but then you're stuffing your container with a little bit too much, and the EOQ is great for consolidating your shipping, because you can look back and say, well, how many do I really need? In this particular order, can I afford, based on the EOQ and my forecast horizon, can I shave that down to 5,500 and still be in the ballpark? So the first thing you do is you check your forecast, make sure you're not going to run out of inventory, but then you check your EOQ to make sure that you're still okay, you're within the ballpark of being efficient. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about you saving as much money as possible in your orders and being efficient with your order costs and your holding fees. That's what the EOQ is all about. So if you create a great range within this flat spot right here, you'll be able to then make decisions based on actual numbers that you've put together, as accurate as you can get them. You'll be able to make really great business decisions as you consolidate orders or consolidate factory orders into a port and determine the size of your containers that you're going to ship over, which the difference can be many thousands of dollars many times a year, and that just completely adds up. So this is what the EOQ is for. This is how we use it, and this is how the graphs are built. You can build this graph so simply, because I'm going to give this exact graph to you. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to put it in the members area under these videos, just the way it is right now. All you have to do is come back here, and let me bring this up a bit. Come back here and say, you know what, in this particular product I sell 45,000 a year. But let's say a full container is $4,500, and you ship in full containers, and your annual storage cost per unit is $3.30. This is all done for you. Look at that. EOQ is calculated. You'll never see a square root again unless you want to Google it for whatever reason you ever want to do that. And look at this. 11,000 right there. You figured it out through the square root. You know to the unit, but now you know 11,000 is your sweet spot. And you understand what this curve is. You know the 11,000 is here, but this thing's flat. And that's because you're ordering a ton, you've got a stable product, and you have a lot of room to work with in terms of order sizes based on the EOQ, so that you can order around it with other products in filled containers, or shave a few units off a container to get a smaller container for that particular shipment. So that's the EOQ. That's how you use it. At least that's how I use it, because we're not a manufacturer just making a bunch of widgets, and we have a dynamic business. We have different ports, different factories, different variations within a factory, different products coming from a factory, and we use all the systems that I showed you for forecasting, and then we balance them based on the EOQ as we're making our order sizes as it relates to consolidating our shipping into different containers. And that will wrap it up for the deep dive in the EOQ. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much. Thanks for watching. Inventory Boss helps e-commerce sellers increase profitability by balancing their business through solid inventory management best practices. Visit inventoryboss.com today and get all of our training and the use of our cloud-based software for an initial price of only $10 for the first 30 days. Get started today.